All right, we're making a lot of progress. We learned how to do the throat slash gag with a machete. We've learned how to do different gunshot effects with compressed air. Now the next thing we're going to learn is going to be another really quick, simple, but effective effect, and that is rigging up a prop knife with just a little bit of blood tubing and a baby irrigation syringe, something that the killer, or the actor playing the killer, I should say, can trigger themselves. Essentially what we're going to do is glue some tubing along one end of this knife with some holes cut in it for where the blood is going to flow, and the whole thing is going to connect to this irrigation syringe that the killer can hold in their hands by themselves, so it doesn't require a special effects technician. They can draw it across their victim's throat and just squeeze this syringe to get a little bit of blood flow. So it's a nice, simple, self-contained effect, something that you don't have to have a special effects technician hiding out of camera range for. So you can do a wider shot if necessary. And we're going to go ahead and put this all together in one shot. It's going to be really quick. So the first thing I want to do is take my prop knife and figure out where exactly do I think the blood needs to flow from when it's going across our victim's throat, arm, wherever. So I'm just going to kind of figure out where that blood flow needs to start, and I think it wants to start kind of right here where the blade curves into the flat end. This particular side is going to be the side that's facing the camera, again assuming our killer is going to be right-handed. So this will be the back side facing away from the camera. So I'm just going to put a little mark on the back side where I think the blood is going to start flowing. So we're going to take a little bit of our vinyl tubing that we've been using for everything else, and we're going to glue it as close to the edge of the blade as we can. And we're going to run it along the length of the blade, and we'll end up cutting it right about here. There's a variety of different things you can use to glue it with. I'm just going to use a little bit of super glue for now, and if it needs a little extra strength, we'll tack it down with some JB Weld later. So I'm going to use a couple of drops of super glue to get it started, and again I want it as close to the edge of the blade as I can possibly get. And I'm going to hit it with some of this spray catalyst that's going to accelerate the cure of the glue. This is all stuff that you can get at a craft store, the super glue and the spray catalyst. Usually Hobby Lobby carries this stuff. That's where I got it. So this is going to make the glue cure extra fast, so I don't have to sit here and hold it for too long. And I'm going to keep going down the length of the blade. I'm going to add a little bit more glue, and then a little bit more spray catalyst. I should note you probably want to minimize getting this stuff on your hands. I should have worn gloves. I don't want to encourage bad behavior. I'm actually going to wash my hands right after this. A little bit more super glue and a little bit more spray catalyst. So that's cured quickly, but I think we're still going to go along the edge of it with some JB Weld, kind of like we did with our machete, and make sure that that's permanently secure and that's not going anywhere. I'm going to pause the video and go wash my hands. Okay, we've got our vinyl hose super glued to our blade, the back side of our blade, but the super glue runs the risk of popping off there. It doesn't want to grab hold of certain surfaces permanently. So just like our machete, we're going to go ahead and we're going to reinforce it all along the edge of the tubing with some JB Weld, and then hopefully that gives us a stronger bond. As always with the JB Weld, it's a 1-to-1 mix, and you can eyeball it. It's a little bit forgiving. And we're gonna run this along the vinyl tube and the back of the knife blade, so we make sure that's a good strong bond and that's not going to pop off. Because like I said when we were doing our machete video, the last thing you want to do is have an effect or a gag that you've prepared fail and the entire casting crew is standing around waiting for you to fix something. It does happen, but it's not a good feeling when it does, and you always want to try and minimize it. So we're going to let that JB weld fully cure, and then we're going to come back in and do our next step, which is to block the tip of the hose here with some hot glue and then snip off the rest that we don't need. So this is a self-contained rig for our actor. Okay, so our JB weld is pretty well cured. Hopefully our tubing is on there nice and secure. So we're gonna snip off the rest of the tube that we don't need. And since the actor is gonna be holding this in his hand and triggering the effect himself, we're gonna cut it a little long for now. Then we can go back and trim off a little bit more if we need to. So essentially what's going to happen is the irrigation syringe will get filled up with blood. It'll go into the tip of this tube, and then the actor will hold it in his hand and trigger the effect himself. So as I was just shooting that last segment, I realized I used the wrong diameter of tubing for this. I have two smaller tubes and they're very similar. In size, one has a slightly thicker inner diameter than outer diameter. The one I had intended to use fits the end of the irrigation syringe perfectly. This one doesn't. So that's not a big deal. We're gonna go ahead and heat the end of this tube with our heat gun. And we're just gonna bore it open just a little bit so the end of our irrigation syringe fits. I'm gonna try the end of this Sharpie and just open this a little bit wider. And then hopefully, yeah. Our syringe will fit right in there. So now that we solved that little problem, and these things happen, we opened up the end of this tube with the heat gun and the Sharpie. So now when we go to fill our irrigation syringe with blood, it'll fit with just a little bit of force, real snug, into the end of that tube. So when the actor triggers it, it shouldn't cause any leakage. So we're going to pop that out and fill the end of this tube with some hot glue. That way it seals that end, and then we'll open up the tube here where we want the blood to actually flow from. We're ready to go ahead and cut the hole, or in this case, burn the hole in the tube where we want the blood to flow from. You can use an X-Acto for this, but like I did with the machete, I like to use a soldering iron or a wood burning tip for a more precise cut. So we're going to remember where our mark was on the back of the blade. You can kind of see it through the tube where we think it's going to cut into our actor, or look like it's cutting into our actor. And we're going to go ahead and burn a small hole in the tube. Now we want to keep this as close to the blade as possible. We don't want this on the back of the tube. We want this underneath the tube, very close to the blade, so that when we pump our blood, it looks like it's flowing from a wound right up against the blade. So I'm just going to burn a small hole in here, and that should be enough for the blood flow that we need. and that looks pretty good. So I'm just going to clean up that excess plastic with an X-Acto, and then our rigged knife is ready to test. So the next gag we're going to be doing is a simple knife, another slashed throat gag, but we're doing the baby irrigation syringe that's going to connect to the knife. So the way we do that is really easy. We're just going to fill this irrigation syringe with blood, and we want to fill it all the way. We don't want any air pockets in there, because once we squeeze our irrigation syringe, we want the blood to start flowing pretty quickly. And this is going to tuck right into this tube. And then when I squeeze that, you should see the blood starting to flow pretty quickly, and it's going to come out of this tip right here. So the idea is when I drag the tip across the victim's throat right there, we'll get a little bit of a blood flow, and all the tubing and the syringe is going to be away from the camera. So my victim's going to step into the kill zone right here, and we're going to keep her hair hopefully clean, and we're going to drag our knife